This conference will now be recorded.
Balcony, all you'd hear would be traffic from I-95, so which I guess would be okay.
Yeah, it might be distracting in the background.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
How are you?
Good evening.
Stacy, Glenn. Is that Glenn who just checked in?
Yes, sir. It is. Yes,
Cool.
I have a. I'll be on for about an hour. I have a class at 7, and this will be the last conflict that I have with my class. I have a class from 7 to 9 on Wednesdays. So I apologize. This Wednesday, and I'm sorry. Right, today and the last meeting, I had to excuse myself a little earlier than normal.
Right. Well, we're all volunteers, and so we're doing the best we can with the time we have available to us. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to start by reading the declaration?
Yes, please.
Okay. Due to the nature of the declaration of a state of emergency due to novel coronavirus COVID-19, pursuant to Code Section 2.2-3708.2, this meeting is to be held by electronic communication via the web platform GoToMeeting. The catastrophic nature of this declared emergency makes it impracticable and unsafe to assemble a quorum in a single location, and the purpose of this meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. And Stacy, will you do the roll call?
Sure. From the city of Fredericksburg, Dave McLaughlin.
Here.
Dave McLaughlin's here. Joshua Brock.
Present.
Joshua Brock is present. John Castellarin.
Here.
John Castellarin is present. Matthew Rowe.
Here.
Matthew Rowe is present. From Spotsylvania County, Al Durante.
Here.
Al Durante is present. Neil Holleran. I have Neil Holleran is absent. Neil, if you're with us, just put something in the chat, please. Stan Huey. I have Stan Huey as absent. From Caroline County, Ken Pogue. Okay, Ken's absent. Michael Hoyt. Michael Hoyt is absent. Justin Chenault. Justin Chenault is absent. From Stafford County, Melvin Allen. Okay, Melvin Allen is absent. David Swan. David Swan is absent. Ethelene Crenshaw. Ethelene Crenshaw is absent. Glenn Goldsmith.
Present.
Glenn Goldsmith is present. Wade Sudreth.
Present.
Wade Sudreth is present. Tara Durant. Tara Durant is absent. From King George County, Robert Gates. Robert Gates is absent. At-large members, Larry Gross.
He's here.
Larry Gross is present. Rupert Farley.
Here.
Rupert Farley is present. and Dustin Savage. Dustin Savage is absent. That concludes roll call, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For the record, Fredericksburg is 100% participation. Let's move on to the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there anything that anybody needs to add to the agenda or change on the agenda, timing wise, or anything like that? Anybody need to amend anything? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So move. This is Rupert.
Thanks, Rupert. And a second?
We'll second it. Larry.
Thanks, Larry. All right. The at-large guys are awake. Thank you. All right, now let's move to, this print is too small for me.
Approval of the minutes. Yeah.
Okay, yes, approval of minutes. So, and I am going to offer a change to the minutes that will need to be discussed, but are there any other, is there any other things that people need to talk about the minutes before we move to approve them?
Well, this is Rupert. There's one little detail. My name didn't get included on the list of people attending because I got in after roll call. So maybe some adjustment to the list could be made to reflect that.
Absolutely, no problem at all. Now, anybody else? All right, Stacy, are you gonna put my amendment up to the minutes, or should I just talk to it?
If you just want to briefly mention it, I don't have it ready to pull up, but we do have it ready to include your exact, so if you just want to kind of mention exactly, the gist of what you want to change.
Okay, from the last meeting, there was a quote about me, well, here it is, okay. It was, I mentioned an issue for the previous CTAC. So I went on the wording that I provided to Stacy that would expand that to say that, unlike the policy committee, and this is what I explained at the last meeting, unlike the policy committee, the CTAC, we have no requirement in our bylaws that a motion must come from one jurisdiction and the second must come from a separate or different jurisdiction, which caused us a hiccup in that meeting, if you'll remember. So I just kind of expanded on that first sentence there a little bit to say that, to make it a little clearer. Then I went on to say in the second sentence where it says, I indicated that CTAC did not have any substantial issues, I said, that I actually had, when I represented us at the policy committee, this is what I briefed at our meeting, that when I represented us at the policy committee, I was specifically asked why the CTAC did not approve the goals and objectives from the draft long-range transportation plan. And my response to them was that it was not substantive issues that we thought they were just way out to lunch and we couldn't deal with them but it was more of a trying to figure out how to, in a timely manner and an efficient manner, deal with word changes on some of the objectives so we basically came to an impasse, not over substance, but more of just the functionality of trying to make the changes that we would like to make. And so we did not actually endorse or not endorse the long-range training plan goals and objectives, which at the meeting the policy committee went on to approve. So anyway, so I just want to expand on that, on what I tried to say at my last meeting, or what I think I said at my last meeting, under old business. So given that, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So move.
Thank you, Robert. And a second?
Second, this is Al.
Thanks, Al. Anybody who's not in favor of those minutes? Is there anybody, because they did not attend the meeting, should abstain from the minutes? Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying
Aye.
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 thank you. Okay, so the minutes are approved. All right, moving on to we're looking at old. That's, are you in the minutes? Yep.
Number 6, Mr. Chair, Policy Committee meeting review.
Oh, okay, that's up to you. Go on, thanks.
Okay, sure. So one important thing that came out of the last Policy Committee meeting last month was that Mr. Matthew Kelly, who represents the city of Fredericksburg on the Policy Committee, asked that the April Policy Committee have on its agenda the GW Ride Connect issue. GW Ride Connect works with commuters to match them up to different ways to get to work other than driving their own vehicle, a single occupancy vehicle specifically. So Mr. Kelly asked that the GW Ride Connect funding issue be put on the April agenda because in June of 2020, the policy committee had voted to reallocate funding for GW Ride Connect with a stipulation that TAC would help find alternatives for GW Ride Connect. TAC is the Technical Advisory Committee for FAMPO. However, at the date of that meeting, TAC had not yet identified alternative funding. So that was a concern. In the April Policy Committee meeting in a couple weeks, they will be taking up that issue. Also, an action item, they voted to approve a memorandum of understanding between FAMPO and the Transportation Policy Board, which is like FAMPO's northern counterpart, so to speak. They include a portion of North Stafford in their jurisdiction. However, FAMPO for the past few years has been incorporating that northern Stafford area into our work. So we need to update a memorandum of understanding as to what FAMPO will do for that area on behalf of the TPB. So they approved a letter to be sent with MOU language for the TPB's policy board to consider. And to date, we haven't received any word as to whether that was accepted or not by the Transportation Policy Board. Also, an update was given at the meeting by FAMPO Administrator Ian Allis. He presented work that's going to be done to develop a project prioritization process for the new long-range transportation plan. This is going to be a scoring methodology that has a really strong correlation with SMART scale scoring. So SMART scale is the program and policy that transportation projects must go through to apply for state funding, and they have a specific scoring criteria. So FAMPO staff is working on making all project prioritization scoring processes that we do kind of correlate strongly with SMART scale, so we're all on the same page. And then finally, to note that Dustin Savage, our at-large CTAC member, was reappointed at the policy committee. So Dustin will be with us for 2 more years, I believe, at least. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Good job, Justin. Thanks. Although, not sure you're on the meeting tonight, unless you just joined us. Okay, so now it is time to call for public comment. If there's anyone who's dialed into this meeting or joined this meeting electronically and would like to make a statement, bring up an issue with the CTAC would be interested in hearing, now is the time to do that. Anybody online who would like to do that? Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment this time? There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting to make a public comment based on what we discussed today. Okay, seeing none and hearing none, I'll close the public comment period at this time. Moving on to member discussions and action. So I just want to preview that in June, we will have the election for the chair and the vice chair. And I just want to say that, as you know, it rotates between the jurisdictions. Fredericksburg has usurped our privileges and done it 2 years in a row. So now Spotsylvania should stand up and be the chair for the upcoming year. And then Stafford would be the vice chair according to our bylaws. So I guess what I'm really just bringing this up. We have 2 months to deal with this. It would be ideal if Spotsylvania could kind of decide amongst themselves who should be the chair. That makes things simple. And then on Stafford, likewise, if they could decide who would be the vice chair, and then that would come forward in June, and we would vote on that. So we have plenty of time to think about this issue and deal with it. It's a little tough. I mean, there's only 3 potential candidates in Spotsylvania, with only 3 members, and there's 6 in Stafford to be the vice. So it gets a little tight. Now, there is no formal process for nominating. So even if Spotsy picked, Jimmy Jones out of the 3 people who are currently on the CTAC, any one of the other 2 could say, well, I still want to run, and then we would have a proper election in that regard. So there's no process to exclude anyone in any way. I want to make sure that's very clear. But it would be just an ideal way and more efficient if the 3 members from Spotsy, for example, could coordinate and decide ahead of time who really is who's going to be our chair next time. So anyway, that's all I got to say for that. It'll come up. We'll discuss it again hopefully next month. The ideal would be to have 2 people, excuse me, so it says, hey, I'd really like to run. I would really like to be the chair, and then I would really like to be the vice chair. That would simplify things a lot. Okay, so we're lead turning that problem. Was the purpose of that discussion? Are there any questions on that? Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, just for a point of clarification. So if somebody from Spotsylvania decides to run,
Yes.
Nobody from any other district could run, but if somebody from Spotsylvania chooses not to run, then somebody from any jurisdiction could run?
No, that's a good point. So if nobody from Spotsy, it's not clear in the bylaws, but the appropriate, obviously, would then to just pass it on to Stafford and allow Stafford to become a member from Stafford to be the chair. In other words, Spotsylvania kind of gave up their opportunity to accept that role, and so then it would just pass to Stafford, and we just keep rotating it down. I mean, this is not, it's not earth shattering. It's not like we're in a position to spend millions of dollars or anything like that. So anyway, it would just rotate to Stafford. Rotate Stafford, and then the vice chair would then come back around to Fredericksburg. So, yeah, you just kind of skip a turn is what it basically. Does that make sense, Al?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. There's some good people in Spotsy, though. All right. Next, we'll turn it over to Stacy for her update.
Thanks. I'll wait while we pull up the slide here. Okay, so what you can see on your screen is a timeline for updating the FAMPO public involvement plans. And for those who aren't familiar with these plans, FAMPO is required by federal law to have a formal public participation plan, as well as what's called a Title VI plan. The Title VI plan encompasses non-discrimination policies that FAMPO must follow. And so these plans really guide staff's actions with our community engagement efforts and to make sure that we're not discriminating. It's been several years since this plan was updated, and we have in the staff work program that will accomplish that or a new update this fiscal year. So by June, we plan to have one document that encompasses both that public participation plan and that Title VI plan. They'll both be combined into one master plan that we're calling the Community Engagement and Equity Plan. Equity refers to making sure that everyone has access to fair participation as opposed to equal participation. So this timeline, Matthew, if you can scroll a little further down. Yeah, that's great. So right now, April 5th through April 12th, we're in the process of working with a focus group that's made up of people who represent community interests and traditionally underserved groups. And they're taking a look at our proposed outreach strategies, such as how we've done tabling events at the library, how we've done some Facebook Live things. So we're asking them to review what we have been doing and also propose some creative ways that we can reach out into the community and really promote community engagement in the transportation decision-making process. You all will have a chance to weigh in on the full document. It's going to be presented this month to the FAMPO Policy Committee, just the draft of it, and we're going to ask them to release that for a 40-day public comment period. So that will run from April 20th through June 3rd. So you'll have 45 days to take a look at this draft document and send us your thoughts. And then we hope that around June, the policy committee will formally adopt the policy, and we will have some new strategies to follow for our community engagement outreach. Matthew, if you can open up the other resource under this agenda item. I'm going to show you guys what our focus group is kind of looking at. There's some directions on here that you can take your time and look at that after the meeting. You might have already reviewed it in your packet. So this is a chart that we're kind of asking for feedback from the focus group. They're reviewing our social media, our website. Matthew, you can scroll down a little bit more. Our survey approaches, and right there, if you can hold it there, Matthew, how we conduct surveys, how we conduct in-person events. And so you see the areas in red. What you all can do if you're really itching to take a look at this and provide feedback before the 45-day public comment period starts, you can just take a look at the red questions on the right-hand column and provide us some specific feedback on what we need to know there. So that's just one way that you can participate early and get a jump start on the review process. And Matthew, you can close out of that unless there's any questions. Does anyone have any questions about the, yes, Al?
I have one, Stacy. So you said it's been a while since this plan has been updated, but I know for sure that the Title VI efforts have been updated a couple of times. I mean, they're not laying on a shelf somewhere. Is that a true statement?
Yes, we can't tell to what extent, since all the staff who were involved in that effort are now gone. We can't tell to what extent the changes were made to that. And VDOT, the Virginia Department of Transportation, does not have any record of what changes were made. So we're just we're going back and just rewriting it, simplifying it a great deal, really tailoring it to FAMPO's goals and priorities. So yes, it's true. It was updated maybe 2 years ago, I think, but we're not really certain what exactly was updated. It might have just been that, a document that had to be signed was included in the appendix.
Okay. Well, maybe Al or Larry or, and people around, been around a while. I think I really remember that we actually got an accolade from the state about our Title VI plan and maybe efforts, maybe not the plan per se, but the efforts that we've done. And if that's true, we ought to, pat ourselves on the back for that.
Right, yeah.
Is it?
VDOT also has new staff working in this area, so they haven't been able to find any records, because I've heard that through the grapevine that, we got a pat on the back for our last plan and efforts, but VDOT has no records. It could be because their staff is also new and they just can't locate where those records are. So starting fresh, hopefully will allow us to, keep great records so that going forward, we always know what's being done, what's being updated, and so forth.
Okay, so moving on from the Title VI section of this and just the public outreach piece of it. I mean, you could ask many members that are online right now that we have observed as members of CTAC, incredible improvement in the public outreach. The efforts have been made, the techniques have been made, the introduction of new technologies. And you certainly, the FAMPO staff should certainly take credit for all those efforts. And I mean, it's not just, you just got a new plan that you're updating. They're really, and I'd start off your brief in the policy committee, said, here's some of the initiatives we've done since the last time this plan was published. And I think it's very, very considerable what's been done.
I'd weigh on that. This is Larry. Yes, I agree. The outreach is the best. It's the best I can remember.
And hopefully this plan will keep us going in that direction and to continually improve.
So public outreach is core to Citizens Transportation Advisory, right? So if the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee is telling you that things have improved significantly, that can be a highlight that you can't find anywhere else, and I think you ought to quote that and take credit for that. So and put it in the minutes, and when it's briefed, and say, "Yep." So, I mean, that's in our bailiwick.
Stacy, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the focus committee, and not like specifically who's on it, but kind of who it's made up of, where they're from, how many individuals, anything like that.
Sure. So you all should have received, and if you didn't, let me know because we need to correct. We must have an email issue. You all should have received about at least 15 days ago, maybe even a month ago, an email that announced that we were looking for participants for the focus group. And I didn't have any CTAC members join, which actually I was kind of hoping you wouldn't, because if too many of you joined, we would have had to consider it a public comment, and then the focus group would have had to be open for public view, and we might not have got really honest and in-depth conversation going on if that was the case. So I'm glad you all will be able to review this nonetheless, but the focus group is made up of people who represent traditionally underserved and hard to reach members of the community. For example, we have I believe his title is Director of the Thurman Brisbane Homeless Shelter. We also have people who represent Micah. So they also work with those experiencing homelessness. We have staff members from, I believe it's Spotsylvania County Schools joining us. We also have some media people who have experience through B101.5 and that sort of outlet. And we have representatives from the Disability Resource Center, providing perspectives on how we can be more sensitive, particularly in our survey questions, to be asking the right kind of questions to gather their concerns better than we have been. A wide range of different folks. We have a couple residents who expressed interest, and so they are just joining as a resident and providing us feedback that way too.
Now that meeting was just last evening, wasn't it? 24 hours ago.
Last evening, yes, and then tomorrow we have a follow-up. Tonight they are taking a survey so that we can document all of the feedback, and then tomorrow we meet to discuss what they've proposed.
And could we observe yesterday's meeting as a recording?
Yes, I do have it recorded, so I can send that around to the group. We had 2 different sessions, so they were identical except the participants different. So I'll send you the first one, but no, we did have a second meeting. It was just a different group that joined.
Excellent. That'd be great. So, yes, I mean, another great example of the outreach we're doing. Okay. Oh, Matt Lahane, the bike and pedestrian data so I'll tell you what, I listened in, Stan's not on here, is he? Stan Huey. I listened in to the bike and pedestrian, the BPAC meeting, and they are really engaged. There's a lot of different issues and initiatives going on in this area. And it's very relevant to us as advisory committee for transportation, because that is a significant piece of the transportation puzzle. And I was really impressed with that meeting. I enjoyed listening to it and learned a lot from listening.
All right, awesome, thank you. And yeah, that was a really good meeting, and we had some really good discussions on this specific presentation. So hoping to continue that here. And if anybody has any questions, happy to answer anything and everything really. So the FAMPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Counting Program, you all have seen versions of this presentation before. We've been talking about it for the past few months and using specifically streetlight data for this. So the Bicycle and Pedestrian Counting Program, FAMPO has a counting device that is able to count bicycles and pedestrians at a specific location. That device currently is along the canal path in the city of Fredericksburg. And that data gets exported to a platform where we're able to view the data and attain statistics such as the daily traffic each day, average that out per month, per year, items like that. So what we're looking to do with that data plus a platform called Streetlight Data, which I've mentioned before, but just a quick overview, is an on-demand mobility and analytics platform. Basically what they do is they take the GPS data anonymously that everyone opts into on their phone and uses that to fuel analyses, transportation-related analyses, zones, segments, basically to give you an understanding of, for instance, I can say, I want to know how many people are driving on I-95 coming from Spotsylvania County. And I'm able to attain a data set from Streetlight that can tell me that. So we're looking to do something similar to that, but with bicycle and pedestrian data. So we're looking to attain comparative bicycle and pedestrian counts. And that is to kind of supplement the current efforts that we're doing with our counter. So we're looking to use the Streetlight Index, which is the data type, to analyze specific locations in the region. These can be used to compare data between locations, compare data by season, months, or years. So what we've done so far is use this data for testing pedestrian trips at several locations across our region, 2 in each of the localities. So we've tested 6 total locations here. And these are tested using the Streetlight platform for trips. And what we also have is, what I'll get into in a bit, are calibrated counts using our counter location at the dog park. We've tested that in Streetlight, as well as have the actual counts from that location. And what we are able to do with those counts from the actual location is calibrate the Streetlight counts. So that helps give us a bit of a clearer picture. Of course, it's still not perfect, but it definitely helps give a better picture of what we're trying to do here. So we have the hard counts from the canal path, as well as FAMPO has collected the data from Streetlight. And the map on the right is just showing where some of those locations are in our region. So the counts. The chart here in the middle is detailing the streetlight data, just the streetlight data without any of the calibrated counts at these specific locations. Of note, the 2018 data is when they first started analyzing bicycle and pedestrian stuff. So it's not necessarily to be used as a comparative, but more so, hey, here's some data, 2018. So really what we want to look at here is 2019 and 2020. You can definitely see in many locations an over 100% jump in the number of people using it. So we really don't want to use streetlight to say there is exactly 749 people along the canal path in 2019 each day. What we really want to use streetlight to say is between 2019 and 2020, there is about 2 to 3 times more people using the canal path, as well as several of the other locations. So we don't want to use streetlight to get an exact number. That's not our purposes here, and that really hasn't necessarily been our purposes of our counting program in the past. More so what we're looking to do is compare locations and compare them over periods of time. So we've partially done that with the data in red here, the calibrated streetlight index. So we've calibrated the data with the data along the canal path for 2 time periods. So July of 2020 as well as January of 2021. So just the past couple of months. So basically we're using that calibrated data to get a better sense of how many people might be using the pass, because streetlight isn't perfect, but the calibrated counts make it better. So we're able to see a better display of data between 2 different periods. So really what this shows is over the summer, a lot more people were using the trails than in the winter. And there was streetlight big uptick between 2019 and 2020. And then, as I just mentioned, the data between summer and winter. So the calibrated counts help give us a little bit of a better picture of trail usage in the region. So really, there are definitely a couple flaws with this. The data, the hard count data at the canal path contains bicycles and pedestrians. However, streetlight contains only bicycle or only pedestrian, which can cause small issues. However, in the grand scheme of things, with what we're trying to do here, the counts are generally still accurate and give off still the general idea of what we're looking at. And I believe this is, so the next steps, so as some of you may have seen at the BPAC committee meeting, work with BPAC to use streetlight data to analyze bicycle and pedestrian trips. So we're working with them to find new locations to analyze this data, apart from the 6 that we currently have, as well as the various locations we've previously tested our hard counts at. So we're looking to get more locations from them and then kind of expand this program into a more analytical data points that we can use at each BPAC meeting and present. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Let me make a comment. Maybe it'll preclude a question because there was a lot of discussion about, or I should say, questions about it in the BPAC meeting. So Spotlight uses your cell phone data and your triggering of the sensors or the repeaters, whatever. It is not an app that you have to sign up to as an individual who goes to the dog park, but it takes hits basically off your cell phone. And Matt could correct me when I say this wrong. Passively, it does not identify you as an individual and track you as an individual, but it'll track that signal and say, okay, from the dog park, this cell phone signal went to down by the river or something.
Yeah.
So it's passive. It's not intrusive. FAMPA does not share any of that data. It's not specific to individuals in any way. So.
Exactly. Yeah. The purpose of the Streetlight platform is to, I'll emphasize, anonymously attain GPS data from a vendor. So every time you're using your smartphone, I can almost guarantee you have opted into an app that has your GPS data that may or may not be selling that GPS data anonymously to a vendor where Streetlight gets the data from. So 100% anonymously, and it's able to tell a number of people who traveled along a certain route or went from a certain location to another location. But there is no way for us to see where did Matthew go from the canal path to the other end of the canal path. Where did he go from there? There's absolutely no way to see something like that. Really, what you're able to see is of the 700 people who traveled on the canal path, how many people traveled on the canal path the next day or the next day or the day after that. Of the 700 people who traveled on the canal path, in general, where did they go by block group after they left the canal path? Items like that are really its general purpose.
I like the example for motor vehicle traffic is, okay, so you have these hits from vehicles from their cell phones crossing, for example, the Rappahannock River, and then you can say, oh, 18% of them went out River Road, and 32% went east on Route 3, or so. I mean, it's really some pretty incredible data for planners like you.
Yeah, I'll give one example. One thing that we would be able to see is at exit 126, once people get off going northbound, going south on Route 1, where do they go? What block groups or other polygons do they go to? So that's just one example, but we can kind of export that type of example to really anywhere in the region. So it really gives us a really good idea when we put in the effort to do a project like this of travel patterns in the region, data that we previously have not had. We have daily traffic data from VDOT, but we don't have too much more. We have congestion data, but this gives us a lot more insight into the travel patterns in our region. And we're working on a lot more projects with Streetlight as we speak.
Question. This is Glenn Goldsmith of Stafford region. About how the app actually, I don't want to use the word tracks, but I'll use the word how it intelligently knows entry points and exit points. If it is able to, let's say, as you mentioned, going down the street and I get off an exit, and then I know how many people gets off at that particular exit. If it's not tracking, then how does it differentiate between, let's say, one person versus the next person versus me actually going down that same road, let's say 15 times in 20 minutes? How does it know that?
So there's a couple of answers to that question. In general, Streetlight uses various sets of complex algorithms to analyze the data that they receive. I believe they receive millions, if not billions, of data points that they then use and compute through their algorithms to give us the data that we've seen here. For instance, they would be able to see, in general, the origins and destinations of individuals. So it's able to tell if when you're leaving a location, when a group of people are leaving a certain location or a certain polygon, and where those groups are going and where their destination ends. So if I leave my apartment to go to the grocery store and I do that every hour, it would count that as multiple trips because I'm taking the trip multiple times. And it would compute that in with its other data points to see how many people within my block group were going to the same shopping center. If that kind of helps explain that a little bit better.
It does a little bit. I do a lot of cybersecurity and privacy work, and I was just curious to know what your explanation would be. So in some theory, it actually does have to track you in order to be able to make error corrections on what it's doing.
Yeah, and I would de-emphasize the word when we say tracks you. More so, it tracks an anonymous data point that there is no way for anyone to tie it back to a specific individual. One of the things that Streetlight has, one of the things is we can't make a zone. If I want to make a set of polygon zones in the city of Fredericksburg, I can't make it too small. If I make it too small, then they say, no, you can't do this. There's too little data points or it's too small of a zone, because then it would help more so track people, so to say. As well as the same thing with if I do a zone in a very rural area and there's less than one trip, it won't give me any data because it's too small of a data point for them to be able to give us.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Larry. I have a question if I can.
Yeah.
Maybe you said this and I missed it. How does it differentiate between what mode you're in?
The short answer is they have a set of algorithms that are able to differentiate between what you're doing. Essentially, one of the ways would be speed. If I'm driving a car, or if I'm walking on, or if I'm on a roadway, it would be able to differentiate between someone walking versus someone driving on that roadway, based on the speed you're traveling.
Okay, thanks.
Who else has questions? Those were good questions. That's people get a little concerned with my personal privacy, tracking where I'm going, that sort of thing. So, but having said that, so looking at that data about the dog park, I'm going to set up a lemonade stand over there because I live across the street. I can make a lot of money of that dog park.
Well, I'll say in the summer, on a nice day.
Yeah, right. Well done, Matt. And now you're going to talk about or present the webpage to us?
Stacy, I believe that is on your end. Or I can pull it up, BPAC webpage and membership. Stacy?
Yeah, yep. If you can just pull that up. This is the Bike and Pedestrian Committee webpage. It's just like the CTAC page. Hopefully, CTAC members, you have visited the CTAC webpage. If not, you can go to our homepage, and under the committees tab, you'll find CTAC, Policy, and Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. Yep, right there. And so you can scroll further down the page and read their agendas, watch their committee meeting recordings, and also find out who the members are.
Any questions on the BPAC? Okay, we'll move to the next. This is a little, we need to engage our gray matter a little bit here. This is kind of, and some of the folks who've been on the board, the committee for a while and longer than I have, kind of get, how can we best, if we're an advisory committee to the policy committee and the technical committee, how can we best fulfill that role? What do we bring to the table that they don't have already? And how do we get input? And how do we properly represent the citizens of our jurisdiction? It's not easy. It's not an easy effort. It's a hard question. It's not easy to solve. And we're making some strides, but maybe there's some things we should focus on. And this is what Stacy is going to suggest to us. Thanks, Stacy.
Right. So, Dave, you explained it really great there. What we're interested as FAMPO staff in doing is to help committee members, CTAC committee members, identify an issue that they would like to explore a little bit more. Transportation, upcoming transportation projects, bike and pedestrian issues. BPAC does not have exclusive control over bike and pedestrian issues. So if that's something you would like to explore a little more, perhaps there's interest to identify what the top 10 dangerous intersections are, or to look at Fred bus stops by kind of going around the neighborhood and conducting an audit by observing bus stops to identify the top 10 inconvenient bus stops. Or perhaps you'd be interested in tasking, as many members as you can on CTAC to use the Fred bus and then come together and discuss your experience. And so no matter what topic you would pick to explore a little more, the end result is going to be that you provide a written advisory opinion to the policy committee, so that they can see what your concerns and what residential concerns are, so that that's on decision makers radar, so to speak. So we'd kind of like you to just be thinking about topics that you really have a passion about or an interest to learn a little bit more. There's some examples here for you to consider, but by no means these limit you. And then Matthew, if you also scroll down to the bottom, the other option would be to, you went a little further, there we go, to seek guidance from the policy committee. If perhaps you want to ask them, hey, we would like to explore a topic, we can't come up with one right now, what kinds of topics would you like a resident's perspective on? And they can weigh in on that and give you some ideas. So Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you in case you want to have a discussion, or if you just want people to think outside this meeting and return the next meeting, that's your prerogative.
No, I'd love to have initial responses to what we're trying to do. It's not easy. And so anyway, yeah, we'd definitely like that.
This is Rupert. How do you visualize these responses being submitted to CTAC?
What did you envision, Stacey?
Rupert, just to clarify, are you asking how to submit your ideas on topics to explore to the committee?
I think I understood you to say, how would I submit an idea to the committee? Yeah,
Yes.
that's the gist of it, Right. What did you have in mind?
Well, I'll leave it up to the chair. You can either have a discussion tonight. We are kind of doing well on time to throw out some ideas to get everyone thinking, maybe on the same path. Or if the chair would prefer, you can, send an email to me, and I'll make sure that I collect all of the ideas and I can send it out as a group message.
Right.
Yeah, because this should be an ongoing process with no timeline or no suspense. So if somebody has something right now that they want to throw out, or they just develop it over the next period of time, just
well, heck,
contact.
For decades now, it seems like I've been occasionally. It's been a long time since I've spoken out about it because I don't like to sound like a broken record, but I've been trying to tell the policy committee that what we've been doing, for the last several decades in the way of transportation policy ain't working. It's getting us worse and worse. We're spending more and more money on infrastructure, and all we do is induce more sprawl and crap up the infrastructure that we built. And everybody acknowledges that this is what's happening. And even when we started down this path back in the 50s, the transportation planners back then said, it ain't going to work. And they were right. It's not. So I've been trying to get FAMFO for years to have a legislative committee to go to Richmond and another legislative committee to go to Washington, D.C. to give us the freedom to make another choice, to go down a different path. We can go back to the same path we had, so more or less back in the 40s and then prior to the 40s when the country was basically had a mass transit-based transportation network where you could get anywhere in the country almost, except from city to city and anywhere in a city without being dependent on an automobile. And one of the things that I've recommended is doing a scenario study of how things would work out if we decided to scrap this business of paving our way out of congestion and use congestion pricing whenever we get a congested road. And also to make transit part of the public utilities that are required by every development, along with lights and water. None of this has gotten anywhere in my previous attempts, so I'll mention it now.
Okay, so it's a broad subject. You're suggesting a study? Or, I mean, I imagine there's like libraries full of opinions on and discussions about the nature of this issue of transportation in America. What at our level, what can we do at CTAC?
What can we do that's different? I feel like as if we did a scenario study so that we could come back with some dollar figures to show to the public. Because right now, nobody wants to touch this with a 10-foot pole. You know, the people that are elected don't want to support it because it's the voters are clueless, and you get voted out of office. The professional planners don't want to touch it because they're hired by the guys that I just mentioned, and they don't want to lose their jobs. All that leaves is groups like this, CTAC, that don't have any jobs to lose and don't have any elections to lose, to put these ideas forward. Now, if we put the idea forward, you know, to do this scenario study and come back with some data, some dollars and figures amounts saying, hey, folks, we can, instead of spending billions and billions of dollars a year on trying to fix something that didn't going to work, we can switch to a program that doesn't cost us anything virtually, you know, that the congestion pricing not only pays for itself, it might even have money left over. It should have money left over to pay for the public transportation. So once people can have some dollar figures in front of their face saying, this is why we should make this change. Right now, the public's not even aware that it's possible to make a change. But if they're not only made aware that we can go down the route of going back to a mass transit-based network, and be made aware of the fact that if it's going to cost you a lot less and it's going to do a lot less damage to the environment, maybe then people will be willing to consider it. But until it's out there on the table, we're going to get nowhere.
Okay. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say to sort of maybe take a part of what Rupert's talking about. I think he raises some good points. I think he raises some good points about what is the negatives in being able to complete a study like that or an analysis like that. But to maybe we can start by looking at, I mean, I don't necessarily, Rupert seemed to say, and yeah, I may be putting words in your mouth, Rupert, that, you know, because we build roads, that causes urban sprawl. But, you know, what I see is that our electeds are going ahead and putting out all kinds of development, mostly housing, not necessarily economic development, but don't really consider transportation when they do that, and certainly don't consider mass transportation. I know there was a case here in Spotsy where they were talking about doing development and basically wanted to have a basically what I consider to be a concierge bus, a Fred bus that was going from the development to the train station. Yet there were other developments that had been built along the same road where bus transit had existed before, and there was a real pushback about, you know, I said, well, why don't we just run that bus instead of just, you know, you already have it there, you've had buses there before, it's not like it's going to be a big construction issue. Send it out to, you know, the furthest development that has recently been put up in Spotsylvania. So, you know, that may be something we want to look at, how that interplays, the interplay between development and public transportation, or even transportation in general, you know, how that affects transportation. But certainly, I think looking at public transportation would be a good thing.
Yeah, this is Josh Brock. I just wanted to comment on what you said just a second ago, Al. I believe was it last month, I think, that Mr. Hollis came and told us one of the major problems facing FAMPO is the fact that we have to build transportation networks to places that are built, and we don't have any say in where they're built and whether that's convenient to a transportation network or not. And to comment on what Rupert said, and I apologize if I'm misinterpreting you or putting words in your mouth, Rupert, but it seems like it's a question of what is the CTAC, what do we see as our role in actually affecting the basic distribution of transportation and the modes of transportation in our area. And I mean, a lot of what we're asked to do is, we're sort of consulted on certain things, right? And that's great, and that's important and necessary, but it's also a sort of passive role, right? In the sense that people bring stuff to us, and perhaps Rupert is suggesting that we take a more active role. It's our job to sort of represent the needs of the population directly, as opposed to just through data points, and that maybe we would want to embark on some kind of directed program of instituting, or at least getting our ideas out to the decision makers and to the public.
Joshua, I think what you just said is the mission statement for what Stacey was putting forward. Yeah, you're right on. I mean, it's what are we about and why, and what can we really get our teeth into and make a difference other than, yeah.
But he also raises an interesting point, Dave, and which is sort of the first thing that popped into my head, having served on the Spotsy Transportation Board, is, they're making decisions. The counties are all making decisions. They don't come to us and ask us where they should build the development or where they should, extend Fred. So, how do we have an effect in that case? Is it just by bringing it to the forefront and raising attention? That may be.
I think so. I think so. If we do adopt something that we really get our teeth into, and we are the spokesperson for, I mean, literally the CTAC could send something to Stafford and I mean, to the jurisdiction themselves and say, hey, here's something we want that as representatives of your citizens, we've identified as an issue, and something that, take this into account. And here is the quid pro quo for the decisions you're making. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be easy to do, especially in a committee kind of environment, but that would be the ideal, I think, and it addresses what you're saying now. Yeah, if we could do that. Excellent. Who else has been quiet and wants to say something? All right, so it has been a, sometimes we'll get some technical thing come through that we endorse, and we're kind of like, well, we really don't understand that level of detail about these technical or these financial distributions of the funds between one account and another. But yeah, okay, if the TAC advised, we have no issues with it, we'll pass it through. So, and I think what we're trying to get is beyond that, and to get to something where we can work on some specific issues and learn more ourselves and be able to educate others based on what we're learning more to improve ourselves. So, yeah, it's a great subject. So, so I'd say at this point, so we've got some inputs. I kind of like, I think just anyway, we've got some inputs, and we'll just welcome inputs from anybody on the committee on or questions or discussion items, or tell me more about this. Any of that would be helpful for us to approach in our meetings as part of our agenda. So it's a more active agenda that fits what you want to know about as our committee members, and how we can be helpful to the people we represent. So I think it's a great subject. Any others?
It's Rupert again. I'm a little unclear now. Now that we've made this input, what do we want to do with it?
Well, I want to see if there's some more inputs. I mean, you know, this was the first time this subject has been broached amongst this group. Not all the committee members are on the group. I mean, there's some significant people like Dave Swan and some others who aren't even on here. So, the idea is that, Stacy, we should put out that this is what we talked about. This is what we're kind of thinking, and tell them to, hey, bring forth things just informally as an item of discussion for the committee that we can, we'll focus them through Stacy and get them out to the rest of us. So
Okay, thanks.
It's not a one and done.
Thanks.
Does that address the questions, Rupert?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, cool.
And maybe if we took a little more active, aggressive, whatever, maybe we could help with some of the sticking points that we've seen over the last year and kind of move things along so that, you know,
right,
9 months later, we're not finally getting to doing a memorandum of understanding or things like that.
I agree. Excellent. Any last thoughts on that? This is significant. This is for where the committee is headed. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Stacy. Okay. All right, Stacy, you're on an upcoming public comment period. It's a summary of many that are going on.
Sure. So these are the anticipated public comment periods that will be coming up in April and May. We'll know for sure if the anticipated timeline towards the bottom of your screen is accurate after the policy committee meets on Monday, the 19th of this month, because they need to formally approve all of these documents for public comment. But what you can watch out for is an email that will come out that mentions these 5 items here on your screen. The first one is going to be an opportunity to take a look at the Unified Planning Work Program, and what that is the staff work program for the upcoming fiscal year. It details the things that staff are proposing that they spend their time on and that they spend money on for the fiscal year. The next item is an amendment to the current Unified Planning Work Program. That is just seeking approval and public comment on staff proposal to deprogram funds and directly carry them over to the next fiscal year. And then the third document that we anticipate going out for public comment is an amendment to the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan. So that is our current long range plan that projects 20 years out and lists the transportation projects that the region as a whole intends to complete over the next 20 years. And the amendment is going to ask to include the Smart Scale Round 4 projects. So Smart Scale is the state funding methodology, and several projects receive funding through Round 4 of the recent Smart Scale process, and those projects need to be updated or included in the Long Range Transportation Plan in order to formally receive funding and move forward. The fourth document is going to be an amendment to our transportation improvement program. So you can kind of think of the transportation improvement program as a short-term transportation planning document, if you will. It lists transportation projects that have funding in the short term. I believe it's about 5 years. Matthew, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here. And the reason it needs to be amended is to add a project for the Rappahannock Area Community Services Board, The Department of Rail and Public Transportation will award them new funding for a project, and that funding and project must be included in the current transportation improvement program in order for it to move forward. And then finally, as we talked about today, we're going to have our community engagement and equity plan out for public comment. It's going to be a 45-day period. So definitely that's one that I'm really pushing. I hope we receive a lot of public comment on that, because this is the document that spells out exactly the strategies that staff are going to use to support this committee. You guys are included in that plan too, and also how we're going to reach out to the public, and also our strategies that we're going to use to make sure that the playing field is level for the public to participate in the decision-making process. So again, these are just anticipated timelines. You will receive an email when this is confirmed, letting you know how you can review the documents and send us your thoughts.
This is Rupert. Maybe you could refresh my memory regarding item number 3. Did we select projects for smart scale that were not in the long-term plan?
I'm going to ask either Matthew or Adam to weigh in on that one if they can, because I'm not absolutely positive. I see Matthew has his mic off. Go ahead, Matthew.
I believe out of the 10 or so, 10 plus projects that received Smart Scale funding, only 1 or 2 were either half in the LRTP or not in the LRTP altogether. So it's only 1 or 2 that were partially or not at all in the LRTP.
Thanks.
And Mr. Chair, then back over to you.
Okay. Okay. This is our my hot mic. Okay. This is our.
I think
second,
we need Matthew to pull back up the agenda.
Okay, no, I got it. This is our second opportunity for public comments. The concept being here is that we've now discussed some items for a while now, and that it might have triggered some thoughts or comments from the public who would like to weigh in at this time. And so we open the floor up to anyone who's dialed in to give us their comments on what they've heard tonight or other issues. Is there anyone out there who would like to speak? Anyone out there? All right. So I'll close the second public comment period and move on to correspondence. Please.
Sure. So I'll just be brief here. These are resources that you can review on your own time. The first one is a link to a webinar that FAMPO staff watched and thought that it might interest the committee. It really does a great job of showing examples of how roadways are unintentionally designed or improved in such a way that it makes it more dangerous for pedestrians. So that's a video you might want to watch in your own time. It's really great. And Matthew, if you want to go back to the next item, there's Virginia rail news all over the newspapers. So this article is just providing you with some information on the effort to link Maryland's rail and Virginia rail systems. There's a great deal of support for this. This article will just give you a little bit more information. And then we have another one, I believe. Yep, more rail news. So this is specific to Virginia. It's the governor and Mayor Pete, as we still call him. The Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, they spoke at an event as well as the Virginia Secretary of Transportation, Shannon Valentine, just to kind of celebrate that there was a formal agreement with Amtrak, CSX, and VRE. It's really going to allow rail to expand in Virginia, and this article gives you some facts on that.
It should be music to Rupert's ears, although it's going to take 10 years.
Yes, and for staff reports, we do not have anything to report. So I will turn it back over to the chair for member reports.
Okay. Of the four of us that are here from Fredericksburg, do anybody have anything to bring up from Fredericksburg perspective?
Nothing in particular to report from me, no.
Thanks. All right, Spotsy, Al and your cohorts.
I don't have anything.
All right. Stafford? All right, King George? Okay, Caroline, and at large.
Hey, this is Larry. This is Larry. Can y'all hear me?
Absolutely.
I had two things. One of them is I hope Al considers running for chair. He's at most of the meetings, and that counts a lot for being chair. Good. And so the second one is, does anyone have any knowledge about what's going on with the Lafayette Boulevard and the Blue Gray Parkway, where they're building that roundabout, in terms of the VCR trail and any other trail type connections there?
This is Matthew Lane of FAMPO. I don't believe they are changing the alignment of the VCR trail at all. The city turned down the Royal Farms, which would have changed the alignment a little bit, but they are building a shared use path from the intersection at Blue and Gray up to the top of that hill there.
Okay, is there something that's going to happen between the VCR trail that allows people to get across into the park? Can they cross on the roundabout?
I believe at the roundabout there will be pedestrian amenities, yes. I'm not sure of the exact specifications though.
This is
Okay,
Rupert.
thanks.
Yeah, this is Rupert. I've got one comment to make, and that is I'm not too happy about the format that we got the agenda in this time. All on one sheet, so to speak, one long scroll. I found that awkward to use, and I'd recommend that they go back to our old format of agendas.
Hey, Rupert, I didn't see any difference between what I opened up from in the past. There were fewer items that we could link to, and maybe this is what you're alluding to. For example, we should have been able to link directly, a hyperlink from the agenda itself to, say, the minutes from the last meeting.
Exactly. That's exactly
Okay.
what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I found it awkward to have all those items all on one sheet.
Okay. So
I'd rather have the links like we used to have.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there were some links, but there's some of them were missing. All right. Cool. I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So maybe for going back to the earlier question about the trail connections and the influence of the construction on Lafayette and maybe we could get an update on that from the staff on here's how it looks and here's kind of the issues that we just linked to. If we could get that maybe the next meeting, would be a quick presentation.
Since it was brought up, I mean, I passed it, I don't know, I think last week, and, quite a bit of construction's gone on since, I don't know, the month since the last time I passed it. And so it's more of a roundabout now, but it seems more, and maybe because it's still under construction, maybe it's hard to tell, but it seems more focused on easing traffic for folks coming in and out of the development than for doing anything for traffic on Lafayette. That's one man's humble opinion.
Okay, so your question was not just people using trails and walking and trying to get across Lafayette. It also involved the whole movement of traffic and so yeah. So okay, so if we get a little broader presentation next month on that that area and what's going on there, might be helpful. Is that what you're getting at, Al? Okay, cool. Thanks.
Move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you, Rupert.
I just moved to adjourn.
Oh. Okay, I didn't have anything to say and okay, is there a second for movement? Oh, so we're not going to adjourn. No, we want to second it. Okay. Well, then I will say. Anybody second to adjourn the meeting?
I'll second John Castellari.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody opposed to adjourning the meeting? I didn't think so. All in favor, aye. Thank you. It was an interesting meeting. Thank you very much for adjourn. It's a good meeting. Interesting.